All right, awesome. Thank you all for coming to Ignite After Dark. We have Dalesse here, who's an amazing agent at South Valley Keller Williams, and she's going to teach us about some buyer consultations. Go, take it away, Dalesse.
Okay. Well, I'm going to cover the first half is about the buyer's guide, using a buyer's guide. And then Lory is going to hopefully join us a little bit later to talk more about the buyer presentation. The good news is the reason that I'm doing the first half and Lory is not doing it right away is she's with a client on a home inspection. And so that's wonderful that her business is going. And we all know that we don't keep banker hours. And so we have to just make it all work. So we're excited to have Lory with us too, and that she'll be able to add some a little bit later on. Cassie, can you go ahead and give me screen share options? There we go, I see it. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab this. Are you guys seeing my little canvas screen here? Somebody give me a yes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Fred. And you're there for me. I appreciate it. Okay, so the wonderful thing about, I'm just showing you this overview because I want you guys to kind of be able to walk through it. And I can definitely send you a copy later if you guys want a copy. But I want to just talk to you about the purpose of a buyer's guide and why you would bother to put one together versus just sitting down and going over the contracts with people. There is definitely some personalities that don't want anything fluffy and they just want you to go over the contracts and they don't want it to be anything more than that. There's other people, especially people that haven't bought or sold a home in the recent, in the last few years, you know, they may have even bought one 10 years ago, but it's been 10 years since they did it. And they're like, yeah, we know the process, we've been through it, but not really because we haven't done it in 10 years. And we remember kind of maybe some of the basics, but we don't really know what to expect for the current market. And then of course, you as the real estate professional are going to be able to help guide them through that. And you want to be able to give them that confidence. So a buyer's guide is basically just a nice looking way, and you can make it, you know, more masculine and more streamlined looking. You can make it fluffy. You know, you want it to represent you. So that's, you'll notice that I've got a lot of teal on mine. That's my logo right here. If you guys can see it on your screens on a phone, it probably is too small for you to see, but my buyer's guide, it's got a lot of teal in it because that's my logo right there. And it, you know, the brand color carries over into my signs, into what I use in my social media posting, that kind of thing. So you want it to represent you. And if you are targeting a specific niche market, say like you're going after relocations, military, 55 plus, investors, whatever you're going to want to be able to really include that in your buyer's guide. In my case, I actually have a niche of investors. So I actually have a slightly different buyer's guide that I use specifically with my buyer's clients, because their questions and their process is slightly different. They're looking at different components than a traditional residential buyer would be. But tonight we're talking about just your traditional residential buyer. So when you go into the buyer's guide, I like to use it as part of my pre-listing packet or pre-consultation packet. So I would actually, you know, I've talked to them on the phone or I've gotten the referral, and I've set up the appointment to meet with them. And I want them to know a little bit more about me and about the process before I even get there. Some people won't even open this email, or they'll open the email and only look at a few pages, and then they're busy or they're not interested and they won't look at the whole thing. Other types of personalities, they're going to like read this whole thing from cover to cover, and they probably won't like print it out or anything, but they'll refer back to it, like, you know, especially later on in the process, and they'll say, oh, I think she said that this is the next step or whatever, and they'll go back and look at it. The other thing is, this is a ridiculously long buyer's guide. I don't expect anybody to actually be able to necessarily go back through it all the time, but I will email out, each of these can be an individual PDF, and so I can email out these steps as we go through the process. I can email them out a copy of the individual pages, maybe either it's a single page or maybe it's a group of 2 or 3 pages, so that we say, okay, we're at this step, and then I send them those pages again, depending on their personality. Some people, again, if they just want the information, I might just put it in an email, and I just put the 3 home inspectors contact information in there and say, here, go for it. Other people want it to be a little bit more, explain to me why we're having a home inspector again, and why are we picking them, and how do I know they're good, and where are their reviews, and all that kind of stuff. So you kind of have to judge the personality of the person you're working with, how much hand-holding they want, and how much they just want to cut to the chase. So that'll be really important. If I tell you nothing else, is put together your resources so you have them. So they're a crutch for you, especially as a new agent, as much as it is to help your clients. But then as you get more experience and as you get better at reading people, then how much of this you actually go over in the buyer's presentation will determine their personality, or be determined by their personality type. So like I said, I like to email this ahead to them before we have the buyer's consultation. And then I actually take a printed copy in full color. I have it in a binder in sheet protectors, and I can just flip through it and use it as a reference and something for them to go, oh yeah, I saw that. Or no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Then you can go, through it more in depth. But really the meat of it is to go through the buyer broker agreement, and you're going to want to go through the contract. You're going to want to be able to explain their questions. That also gets emailed with this. And all the other little things that we send, like the one that talks about the fact that we're affiliated with other businesses, the owners of the brokerage have other businesses, your buyer due diligence form, your wire fraud form. I email all of that ahead of time. So if they're the type of personality that wants to read all that stuff ahead of time and be more prepared, they've got it. If they're not the type of personality, it hasn't hurt anything. I didn't kill a tree, right? I just emailed it to them. And so I don't mind having that extra communication. You never want to be accused of not having enough communication with your clients. So the more you can communicate with them, the better. If they choose not to take advantage of something you email them, that's up to them. But you want to always be able to provide information. If you're worried that you're bugging them too much, make sure that you're asking them along the way. Say, hey, I have been sending a lot of information. There's just a lot of information to share right now. Do you like this constant updates, or are you a little overwhelmed? You just kind of get a feel from them what they think would be best, and they'll let you know. They'll say, I'll have one client that'll say, oh no, I love it. I want to know everything that's going on. Please, keep communicating with me. It's not too much. And then I might have another client, not as often actually, that will say, yeah, just once a week, an update is fine. Do you know what I mean? And that tends to be more your investor clients, your clients that kind of know the system. They just basically want you to check in, once a week and just give them an update. So, and those kind of deals, sometimes if they're a cash deal, they go really fast. And if they're not a cash deal, then sometimes they go a little bit even longer than a residential. So it just kind of depends on the deal. Anyway, before I go any farther, do we have any questions? Kathy, can you check the chat and see if we've got any questions? Look, I see one notification.
No, nothing through the chat right now.
Okay. Okay. So we'll go ahead and jump into the next part. So what do you include in a buyer's guide? Well, for me, I have actually, this long version is the 21-page one. I actually have a shorter version right here that's only 11. And you could even make it smaller. Like it's, you've got a fancy title page, you've got a back cover page. You can definitely chop it down to more meat. But I like to give them overkill of information. And then like I said, if they don't want all that, then that's great. At least I gave them a chance to look it over. But I like to not just tell them about the process, but I like to introduce them to my team. So in my case right here, we've got the introduction about me. Let's see if I can flip on this. But then I go into my team. Now, if you're a solo agent, you don't necessarily have team members that you've paid to be your team, but you do still have a team. You're part of a brokerage, so you're part of just the overall Keller Williams family. But then you also have people that might assist you, like Cassandra that helps facilitate this call. She's one of the people that I use as a transaction coordinator, so she's part of my team. I have a virtual assistant that works in the Philippines. She's my administrative assistant. and she will have contact with my clients. So again, she's part of my team. And then my title company, doesn't matter if it's the buy or sell side, we've got a title company involved. And so I want to make sure that my client is introduced to the people that I typically work with on the title side. These are the 3 different companies that I usually recommend. And the client gets to choose who they work with, but I want them to be very familiar. If we start talking about title issues, I want them to know that I know these people. It's not just some random person that, happens to work in the industry and I've never ever worked with them. So I introduce them right up front. And the title people, they're asking some of the most sensitive questions, like, how much do you still owe on your loan? And does anybody else own the house with you? And are there any liens on the house? That kind of thing. So they're going to ask real personal questions. So you definitely want to introduce that concept to your clients right up front, so they're not caught off guard by some random person calling them up and saying, or asking them questions that are more personal. Then I do talk about kind of an overview of the process. Again, even if people have bought a home before, it's been a while, they want to be able to remember exactly how it works. Then we talk about pre-qualified versus pre-approved when it comes to working with the lender. Again, use this guide as kind of like note cards. It's not an actual script, but it's note cards, kind of bullet points to remind you what you want to cover in the buyer presentation. Don't be afraid to think of it that way. It doesn't make you look like you're looking at your note cards. It just looks like you're explaining the process to the people, which you are, but it also acts as note cards, just like a slide presentation. A slide presentation, like this is acting for me like a slide presentation, right? It's note cards for me to know what to cover with you. And it's that same sort of idea. And so it looks nice, it makes you look professional, but it also gives you note cards to look at, and it doesn't look like you're looking at note cards. So it's kind of funny. So then kind of a basic overview of the different kinds of loans, helping them understand back here. Sorry, I didn't finish this. Pre-qualified versus pre-approved, because those are words that we throw around, and some people will throw them around interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. And then I've got people that I've actually worked with on loans, and so they're my trusted lenders. Again, the people can go with whoever they want, but this gives them some people to start with that I feel very comfortable working with, and I know will get the job done. And so this again lets them know that these people that are going to be asking them very sensitive questions about their finances, that I trust them. Then I give them some questions to actually ask the lender, so that they kind of they definitely feel like they're part of the choosing process. They don't feel like I just gave them a name and number and that's who I expect them to call. I want them to be able to feel they have the opportunity to interview the lender. You have other personality types that are just fine. Give me a name and number and I'll call them and it's a done deal. So again, this is just helping out those different personality types that want to feel a little more involved in that process. The lender will give them the actual checklist that they need to be able to apply for the loan and to be able to do the underwriting. But this just gives them an overview so that they kind of have a heads up of what's going to be asked of them. Again, so that the questions that they ask about their finances, they know that it's a very normal thing to be asked for W-2s. It's a normal thing to be asked if they've got outstanding student loans or medical debt or whatever kind of things that they have, that's a very normal thing to be asking. Because if you haven't been through that process before, you haven't been through the process in a while, they seem like pretty personal questions. Then we get to talk about the fun stuff. We talk about the fact that we are going to talk about your house wants and needs. And in my buyer presentation, we don't actually necessarily stop and talk about it right here in this order, but this is just a reminder that we are going to talk about these things. And just talking about the fact that there is a difference between your must-haves and what you'd like to have, what's a deal breaker and what is, if everything else is equal, what kind of things would make the difference between two houses. So this is, again, it's like a crutch. It's your note card. House hunting tips. I am different, I think, from some real estate agents. I actually don't advocate myself as the person that will find them the property when it comes to residential. When it comes to investor properties, then I'm looking for off-market properties and different things. So I'm definitely going to help the investor find their property. But when it comes to residential sales, I actually tell my buyers that I'm not going to find their house for them. That the reality is that they have way more vested in their finding their perfect house, and they're going to spend way more time clicking through the pictures on Zillow or Redfin or hopefully my app, for Keller Williams, but they're doing it usually months before they even contact me. And so they're much more active at looking at for their particular needs for their particular property. But what I am going to do is help them when they find the homes that they really want to look at. I'm going to help them go see them. Then we're going to talk about their pros and their cons. I'm going to help them think through the process of what's going to fit their needs based on what they've told me their actual criteria is, because people sometimes get caught up in, oh, that house is so beautiful. But then when we talk about what their needs are, it doesn't even fit, most of their really important criteria. So I'm the one that kind of reins in the emotions and reminds them why they're buying the house and what their needs are. And then, of course, I'm going to help them with negotiations. I'm going to help them with problems. I'm going to help them go through the whole entire process so we stay on track for the deadlines, and I'm their fiduciary. So I definitely have value, but in my mind, finding them the perfect property is not necessarily going to be my job. And I also feel like it's important that the people, even when they find a property that they want to go to, before we actually go to it, I want to make sure that they know, let's go look, have you drive home on your way home from work. You go look at the neighborhood and see if that's really a neighborhood you're willing to live in, especially when we're on the lower price end houses. People are just really wanting to get into a house and we're trying to find them something they can afford. But then they'll go drive through a neighborhood and they're like, I wouldn't walk around here at night. I don't want to buy a house in this neighborhood. Well, it's a lot more helpful for them to find that out on their own than it is for me to say, or, for me to set up the appointment to go look at it. And then we drive up and they don't even want to go in because it's not a neighborhood they want to live in. So again, use this as a conversation starter and a tool for you to be able to have those conversations with them. Okay, then I just talked about the process of making an offer, what happens when you go under contract. Then when, of course, they're under contract, now they need home inspectors. Hang on, I need a drink. Okay, sorry about that. My mouth's getting dry. So then again, I give them the name of the contractors. Now, if you notice right here, let me see if I can get this even bigger. There is no contact information here. This is just their face, their name, and their company. And that's very intentional. I want to make sure that I am always their source of information. So here's an introduction. Here's, again, it's a note card for us to talk about home inspectors and why home inspections are important. It gives me a chance to point back to the due diligence page about buyer due diligence page about their rights and what they need to do to be able to make sure the home is worthy of them buying it. And so this is just an opportunity for me to introduce that whole concept and some of the trusted people that I'm working with. But then when we get ready to actually get to that step in the process, then I'm providing them with actual contact information, their reviews, the recommendations, why I've used them, experiences I've had with them. But they're not ready for that right now, right? We're just trying to get them to be ready to actually sign on the dotted line for the buyer broker agreement and actually start on this process. That's not another thing that we need to add to their overwhelm of information. I do go over this pretty clearly, though, what not to do during the home buying process. So a lot of times people get excited to buy their new house. And if they've got a little bit more cash to work with, they might even go out and start buying furniture for the new house. And they haven't even, picked it out, or they've picked it out and they can't wait to buy that perfect piece of furniture to go in that room. And all of a sudden their credit's tilted and now they can't qualify for their house. So I make sure that I go over this page pretty clearly right up front in the buyer's consultation, because I feel like they need to understand that from day one, that now your finances are going to make or break whether or not you get to get the house that you really want. So let's be really careful about those things. Okay, homeowners insurance, if they're coming from a renting situation, they may or may not have renter's insurance. But a lot of people don't understand necessarily how much goes into the insurance. And so I just cover this briefly because, and then I just refer them out to, insurance to get homeowners insurance. And I just realized that my vendor page for homeowners or for hazard insurance vendors is not in here, but it would normally be in here. Then we talk about the title insurance, reminding them what the point of the title insurance is. You've got your trusted home warranties. Typically, a buyer is choosing the home warranty company and the seller is paying for that. That's pretty traditional. You had the crazy time a couple years ago when houses were just going crazy and people were waiving all sorts of things. And so sometimes they would waive that fee and they would pay it. The buyers would end up paying for it themselves. But typically, even if, regardless of whether the seller's buying it or not, the buyer's the one that's picking out the policy because they're the ones that, want to make sure that it's covering all their needs. And so this is the seller basically guaranteeing that, yes, the house is in decent shape that we're selling you. And then I just kind of give them the final steps. I don't go over this very clearly, very deeply, because I want them, we're just so far out in the process. It's just there as a resource for them. I just refer to it very briefly as I'm wrapping things up. And then, I show them some of my reviews. They don't need to see 10 pages of reviews. If they want to, they can go look on Google or your website or wherever you have them. This is just to remind them that, yeah, you have worked with people. And then when you're really new and you don't have a lot of reviews, then I would, start with things like maybe other agents that have worked with you and you did a really great job. Have them give you a review of, I worked with this person and it was a great working experience. They were very professional, that kind of thing. Obviously, all of your reviews need to be legitimate, but they don't always have to be from your clients that did a transaction with you. It can be just somebody that talks about your integrity and your ability to be very clear in your communication. Anything that's truthful, that has to talk about your professionalism and integrity as a business professional. And then, of course, you can start adding in your actual transaction reviews as they come. And then I just have a pretty cover to wrap it up. So there you go. That's my buyer's guide. Do I have any more questions or anything? Nope. Cassie, you're still around?
I'm still here too.
No
and
questions. Oh, sorry.
I wanted to just say, Dalesse, I really like how on your vendor sheet, you don't give all the information. I think that's a great perspective, that you are the source of all the great information. So, and I'm sorry I was late getting on the call. I had some technical difficulties. I love that you presented this because agents, as you know, we have the access to the Home Hub, and I think Dalesse very well presented how you can put your own style to this. And that's really important, right? Because people hire you for who you are and for what you do. And you may have said this at the beginning, Dalesse, why do you think having a buyer's guide sent out beforehand is so important?
I think it's important because on several different reasons. And that is that one, that it gives the personality types that want to know all the details a chance to review things before you get there and know a little bit more about you, especially if it's not like a close friend. It's either a friend of a friend, or maybe it's just a lead that came in off a Facebook ad. And so this just gives them a little more intimate view than just reading random things about you on the internet. The other thing that I think is really important about it is it shows right up front that you do know this process. You know it from beginning to end, and that you have the whole thing figured out. You're not just kind of figuring it out as you go. And I realize as a new agent, you are kind of figuring it out as you go, but you have the resources of the whole brokerage to be able to help you figure it out. And so you're not stumbling through it on your own. And that's the beautiful thing about the productivity coaching, is that you have an advocate that you can turn to for all the parts of this to be able to, if you don't quite understand, you tell your client, be upfront about it. Say, I don't have a specific answer for that, but I have, all my team back at the brokerage that I can call and talk to, and I can get a more specific answer for you on that. And there's different ways of saying that. You have to do it, whatever fits with your personality and your style. But don't be afraid to admit that maybe you don't know everything. Somebody that's a Facebook lead probably doesn't know that you're a brand new agent, but somebody that's in your SOI, they probably know that you're a newer agent. If they're a friend of a friend, they may not realize how new you are, but they still their friend probably told them, oh, they sell real estate. They haven't been doing it for very long, but they're really good at it. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't have recommended you, right? And it's funny because I think sometimes as newer agents, we lack the confidence that we have any real transactions under our belt. But the reality is that at this very moment in time, you already know more than the vast majority of the public does. Even just having gone through school and just starting to get your feet wet in this, you still know more than the vast majority of people. So if you will really lean into the brokerage, really lean into productivity coaching, you're going to find that your confidence grows pretty quickly because you have the resources to get the answers, even if you don't know the answer off the top of your head. Does that make sense? And then, like I said, this buyer's guide allows you to have a crutch or the note cards to be able to go through your presentation, but it doesn't look like you're holding note cards and looking at them. You know what I mean? That's not what you're doing. You're showing them this beautiful presentation and you're hitting the high points, just like you would if it was a slideshow and you were using that to be able to hit all the high points. It's what I just did. You guys just watched it in action. I literally did this off the cuff. And that's how it works.
And I love that because, right, a lot of times I think as newer agents, we think that if we follow a script, we look like we don't know what we're doing, when it's actually the reverse, right? If you're following exactly what you've prepared, that's professional. That's very professional. So I love what you said about that. And to your point, I have a son who's getting his license right now, and he's getting ready to take his test. And to your point of they have more knowledge right now than your average consumer, he came down the stairs and he said to me, he's like, Mom, why on earth would somebody want to represent themselves? Do they have any idea how crazy it is to do that? And, he's been raised by a realtor. He knows what I do on the day-to-day. And even he, after going through school, he's like, I'm kind of like mind blown that people want to do this by themselves. And so I think sending out that buyer's guide at the beginning and showing them your personality, showing them your professionalism, that totally handles some objections before you even get there too. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. It answers a lot of those unspoken questions. And if they do have questions, now they're going to refer to something in your buyer's guide that they can ask a question on, but now you know what they're asking, right? You can actually refer back to it as well. And asking a clarifying question is completely different than an objection. And I think that's another thing that you need to remember when you're doing a buyer's presentation is when someone asks a question, sometimes you have to make sure you're not asking it in a way that it comes across snarky, but you have to ask them, why is that important to you? Kimber was just talking about this in our customer experience class. And when you ask that follow-up question, sometimes they'll reword it in a way that you understand that they're not necessarily questioning your ability or your professionalism or anything else. They have a certain concept in their mind that they're trying to get an answer to. And the way they ask the question may seem like it's a personal question about you, when in reality, the question is just, I don't understand how this works in the system, and you're the person I'm asking. And so when they say, how long have you been in the business? And you ask, explain to me why that question is important to you. And what they say is, I want to make sure that you know how to do this process and that you can get me from point A to point B with helping mitigate all the problems in between. I mean, sometimes they don't explain it that detail, but that's what the question really is, right? The question isn't, the number. They don't care if you've been 2 years or 3 years or 10 years or 15 years. That's not the question they're asking. The question they're asking is, can you get the job done, and can you help me avoid all the pitfalls? And the answer is yes. That's the answer. So what you want to be able to say to them is, you want to say, I have been doing this and helping customers through this process so that you always know I have your back and that I know the pitfalls to look for. And if we do come across pitfalls, because life and humans are involved in this, then you know that I have the resources to make sure that this is as pain-free as possible for you. That's your answer. And that's what they're looking for. They want reassurance that they've hired the right person. You just reassured them. Move on. It's not an objection. It was a question that they needed fulfilled, and now you've moved on from it.
That's a perfect example of a clarifying question, right? That's perfect. They didn't want to hear that you were in the business for 5 years.
No.
They wanted to hear that. And going back to the buyer's guide, going through that process, if they got that buyer's guide prior to meeting you, that question may not even come up.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've already shown to them that you have the professionalism, you've already got the resources in place, you're ready to go to take care of them. So I think the buyer's guide is so valuable. How did you say, and I'm sorry if you did, how soon before you meet with them do you send it out?
You know, sometimes I'm meeting with them the very next day. And so I can't send it out 2 or 3 days in advance. But if I have the opportunity, I like to send it out a good 48 or 72 hours ahead, because people don't always have time to even open the email before I meet with them if I'm meeting them, right away. I mean, I want them to have time to look at it before I meet with them. But not more than 72 hours, because they're not going to look at it because the appointment's too far in advance. If for some reason they're getting ready to go out of town, they're like, oh yeah, we'll get together with you next week, then I'm not sending it to them right away. But I am sending them an email and a text message to confirm the appointment, so they at least have that much from me. And I definitely make sure that they're set up on my KW app to be able to look at properties, and we've already established a connection so that they already feel connected to me, and I don't lose them over the next week as they start to talk to other people. Because as soon as they decide that they're more serious about talking to a real estate agent, then all of a sudden they're talking about it to their friends, and then their friends are like, well, I know an agent, and all of a sudden they're trying to direct you towards their agent. Well, no, you don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure when you get off the phone with that person and you've set the appointment, they feel committed to you. You haven't got them to sign yet, and they aren't legally committed to you, but you want them to feel like they're committed to you. So you're sending a follow-up, you're making sure that they know your appointment, that you're going to come with a buyer consultation, that you'll have information about well, it depends on where they're at in the process, but whatever information that you're going to be able to bring to it, you let them know all that's coming and that you'll be there, so that they know that as far as you're concerned, they're your client. That makes it a lot harder for them to start talking to their buddy's friend, because, well, they've already made an appointment with you. Does that make sense? It's not foolproof, but you want to make sure that's connection. If it's, more days out. If it's a shorter time period, then I'd like to be able to send it out so that it's within 48 to 72 hours of when I'm meeting with them. So they have hopefully a chance to look at it. But a lot of times you show up and they haven't even opened the email, or they opened it and they kind of peeked at it and then they went, I'll just look at it later, and then never did.
I love it. Fantastic. Agents, do any of you have any other questions for Dalesse? No?
No, that was very informative.
Thanks, Fred.
Really was. I'm going to do a little plug for Dalesse too, and if it's okay with you, Dalesse. She's one of our agents. I didn't get the chance to introduce her at the beginning, so just a little history. Did you give them a history about who you are and what you do and all the things?
Nope.
Okay, well, I'll let you kind of give yourself a plug. The reason I look to Dalesse is she is very keen on understanding investments, and she comes from more of an investment background. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Dalesse?
I was an investor for, I think it was 7 years before I got my license.
Yeah. And so Dalesse's passion, from what I've seen, is she really wants other agents to learn how to help their clients become investors and make their money through real estate. And Dalesse has really given back to our community at Keller Williams South Valley, especially by providing opportunities for agents and their clients to learn more about investing. Do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that at all? Or
I can just say, yeah, a couple little things because I want you to be able to talk about the buyer presentation part. But so in the Keller Williams South Valley office, but anybody is welcome to come and you're welcome to bring your clients. And that is, it's just investor education. On the odd numbered months, we actually do an education night where we bring in different presenters to talk about different aspects of investing in real estate. And then on the even numbered months, so coming up in June, we have we play the Rich Dad Poor Dad board game Cash Flow, and it teaches about passive income and the power of passive income. So it's really fun, and it's teens can play it and adults can play it. So if you've got older kids or your clients have older kids, and it's really fun and informative. We've got a speed version of it that we have kind of refined and put together on our own. Because it can be a very long game, kind of like Monopoly. And we try to get it done in about an hour and 15 minutes. And basically it's, get out of the rat race to get into the passive income. And then the education, like this month in May, we had one where we had a lender come in and they talked about investing with your adult children. So that, like, say, for instance, the kid's going off to college, and instead of having to pay for housing, you help the adult child be a first-time home buyer, and they buy either a home with several bedrooms or they buy a duplex or something bigger that they can get into with only 3% down. And then you let all the other renters basically pay the mortgage, and your kid goes to college with free housing. And in the meantime, you have an appreciating asset, and it's a pretty cool deal. So that was what we talked about this last month. I have an email list that I do send the recordings out to for those that can't come in person. But if you can come in person, whether for yourself or with a client, then that's a great resource as well. So yeah, that's kind of the nutshell. And I've been doing that for just over 2 years, 2 years.
I love that. I love that. I am trying to get my screen ready, so hold please for technical difficulties. I'm working.
Do you want to tell the people where to go?
Huh?
Do you want me to show them where to go? Okay.
No, I'm trying to get it to
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so you can share.
Okay. Let's see if we can. Okay. Good deal. So I'll get my face back on here. And sorry, I'm working from my phone in my car. So we're doing the best we can with what we have today. How many on this call have gone on a buyer appointment? Who's met with a buyer and done a buyer presentation? Okay, just for testing purposes, who has not gone on a buyer presentation?
Me.
Okay, Fred hasn't.
Me.
Dixie hasn't. Okay.
I haven't yet.
Not yet. Okay. I'm going to briefly, because I don't have time to, let's see, we've got about 20 minutes left. I don't have the time to really go through my full buyer presentation, but what I did want to kind of go over with you guys was, let me see if I can even share my screen. Host responsibilities, but can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Okay. Share screen. Let's see if I can do this without messing it up. Hold, please.
If you hang up on us, we'll know you messed up.
Right? So true. So true. Okay. Everybody sees this, right?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if we can get this to work. Maybe.
Well, it
Doesn't
says
want
you're
to
sharing
open.
your screen.
Yeah, do you see where it says PDF viewer?
No.
Okay, yeah, my phone is freezing up. It's on fire. So, what do we see now? Do you guys see my screen of my kids on my phone?
Nope. We just see Lory
No.
Erickson has started sharing screen sharing.
Okay. I think my phone is going to combust because it's so hot from doing, darn it, you guys, I'm sorry. And now I can't even get to the Zoom screen. So my phone is seriously melting down.
Oh no.
Yeah. Like it's frozen on my side. So sadly, I'm going to say thank you to Dalesse. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you doing this for our agents. I wish that I could make my phone work, but it's frozen and it's not moving. So
Do you want me just to talk about the forms that you would need to go over in a buyer consultation at the very least?
yeah, if you're okay to do that, because I can't pull anything up. So I mean,
Yep.
yeah, we can talk about the forms that you need.
Okay, let me
And
at least go get the forms pulled up, and then you need to stop for me for a minute because I didn't pull them up first.
Okay, while you're talking, I will tell you, like with my buyer presentation, when I walk into the home, I think there's 3 steps to the buyer presentation in my mind. The first step is to build rapport, right? I never just go straight into it. I build rapport, I have a conversation, I find something about the buyer in their home to relate to them. So for example, I like a college in the state whose colors are red and white and black. And I did a buyer presentation last week who I walked in and their colors on the wall were not red and white and black. And it just started a funny little conversation, right? We started talking football and then I got them laughing. And I mean, I spend 5 to 10 minutes just building a little bit of rapport. So that's my first section of my appointment. The second section of my appointment when I sit down with a buyer is to do kind of like what Dalesse has in her guide. And I go over the process of buying and selling a home. I give them the confidence that I can manage the process. I have a questionnaire that I've sent out prior to being there that asks them the questions that I've come up with. Some of them are like, what are your no deal deals? Meaning like, what's a deal killer to you? Like for me, example, a deal killer for me would be, I cannot have a split entry home. That to me is a deal killer, or purple shag carpet, right? And I kind of talked to them about that, about those things that would be important to me. So we go over their questionnaire so they know I'm understanding what their needs are. And then the last part is I tell them, I look at this as a job interview. I'm interviewing you for the job of being my client, and you're interviewing me for the job of being your agent. And there's some paperwork involved when you hire somebody. So I'd like to go over the paperwork. And that's my cue to go into the paperwork side of things. I start off personally with the buyer's due diligence. And I can't see my screen daily, so I'm guessing you guys are all still there.
Yeah, I think we all are. I can
Okay,
still
you're
see
all
everybody.
okay. So does everybody know what the buyer's due diligence document is?
Let me,
And
let me see if I can share the screen and I'll show them this thing. Hang on. Yep, I can
okay,
still
I'm
share
wondering,
screen.
because
Okay,
if
so
I'm
here,
still frozen, can you?
yeah, right here. Share. And then this is the buyer. Oh, wait a minute, it just went right over my screen. Hang on, I need to get the little bar out of the way so I can move to forms. Okay, so here's the buyer due diligence, guys. Can somebody unmute and just make sure and tell us that you can see it?
We can see it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I kind of joke around and I say, this is your as is, saying that you're willing to accept all responsibilities of buying the home. However, My job as your fiduciary is to help you figure out most of the items on this document here. I think, aren't there like 20, how many items are on there? 20,
21.
21. Out of those 21, I think there are 3 that you don't normally find out in a typical process, right? One is being the survey, knowing the boundaries to the property. You'd have to hire a surveyor to do that. One is the geological status of the ground on it. And then I always joke and say, you live in Utah, you're in an earthquake zone. We figured that one out. And then the other one is involved with like the chemical type testing. So radon, meth, those kinds of things. Those are a la carte items that we would add to a typical inspection. So I just talk about the buyer's due diligence document. I go over each paragraph, each 21 of those 21 items, and explain to them how we figure those things out and who helps them figure them out. So for example, flood insurance is on there, right? Does anyone know who figures out if a house needs flood insurance or not? Fred, do you know? You've been good at answering questions. Do you know who figures out if you have flood insurance needs or not on a property?
I forget. There's a state official, right, who declares a flood zone.
Yeah, nice job. So yes, and that will be discovered through the lender. The lender will tell them, okay, you're in a flood zone, you're going to need flood insurance. So that's something that you can bring up to your client. That so meaning I go through 1 through 21 and I say this item will be discovered with the inspector. This item will be discovered by the lender. This item will be discovered by the title company, and I go through that document. This is not a contract. This is a disclosure document. I have them sign it right there. Initial date that I've told you. So what I'm doing is I'm getting them practice to sign and date the document. So then I move on to the next one, which Dalesse, you're not going to have on this, but it's the affiliates.
I pulled it up
What do we
though.
call it?
I
Oh,
have
thank
it
you.
Right. What screen do I have it on? I do have it. I just have to find the right
You're
screen.
wonderful. Thank you for being my right-hand man, because this is weird doing it totally blind.
Yeah, I did pull it up. I just have to oh, that's right, because it's not on
It's not on the MLS.
yeah. Let's see. I might have to change my screens. Can I move my screen over like this? Let's see if I can.
While you're looking for that, I'll explain it. So what this is because Keller Williams is a franchise, there are owners who own the company. They also own a title company and a home insurance company and a mortgage company.
There we go. Can you
are
guys see
not
it? Affiliate business. Can you guys see that one?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so you are not required to use the mortgage company, the title company, or the insurance company that ownership owns. We are, however, disclosing that we do have ownership in those things, and that's all your client is signing, is that yes, we've disclosed that. And so I kind of go over this document with them and I say, so if you can just sign a date right here, again, this isn't a contract, this is a disclosure. And then I slide it to the side. Now we get to my hiring papers, and I say it just like that. Now we get to our hiring papers, and I'd like to walk you through what this document is, because this is a legal and binding contract, and I want you to know and understand the document that you are going to sign if you choose to hire me and I choose to hire you. And that's my script. And then I go through page by page, paragraph by paragraph, explaining what the contract means. And for sake of time and the fact that I don't have it in front of me, I'm not going to go through it paragraph by paragraph. But what I have done is I've gotten them used to signing and dating the contract. And so as I get to the bottom of the first page, I look up at them and say, and if you're willing to hire me as your agent, you're going to initial and date right here. Oftentimes they don't even think about it. They pick up the pen and they initial and date, right? I'm not tricking them. I'm just saying, look, we're getting into the practice. You're going to sign and date a lot of things. And then at the very end, on the third page, if you'll go to that page for me, Dalesse, there's the section where they get
Are
to
you talking,
sign at
are you talking about the
On the-
deadlines page, or which one are you talking about?
the buyer broker agreement
Okay, yeah, I'm on page 3.
on page 3. See where there's a signature for the buyer and a signature for the agent?
Dalesse, you're on the real estate purchase contract.
Oh, she's
Oh.
on the rep C. I need the
That's what I
BBA.
thought. Something's not right here.
Thank you
You're
for
right.
whoever said that.
It's Cassie, and I'm a dork. I just totally pulled up the wrong form.
Thanks, Cassie.
No
I can't
problem.
see.
Let me
No,
get
I
the right
appreciate you
form.
helping.
Okay, I'm a dork. Now that, well, you said buyer's due diligence, and so I was like, oh yeah, it goes with the Repsy. That's how I always put the packet together. Totally didn't
That's
even
funny.
think about it. I'm so embarrassed. Okay.
No, that's okay. The rep C will be another day for sure.
Okay, how about the exclusive buyer broker agreement? How about that?
There you go, the EBBA.
Oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed.
All right, friends. Is it up?
Yes.
Okay, now on the third page, can you see where there's a line to sign for the buyer and a line to sign for the agent?
Yes.
Okay, when we get to this page, I finish explaining everything. I don't have an initial and date on the bottom. However, I stop and I look at him and I say, I believe that I would like to hire you, so I'm going to go ahead and sign the contract. And I sign the contract. Then I turn the page around and I say, are you willing to hire me for the job of representing you and purchasing your next home? If so, feel free to sign right here. And that's the end of my buyer presentation. It typically takes 30 minutes. And when we're done signing the contract, then I go over the process of how we're going to move forward from that point. So that's it in a nutshell from me today. Does anyone have any questions?
Does everyone know where to find the forms, even if you're not a dork like me and you look at the wrong form? Do you know that you can go right here into forms and you can do the sky slope forms, which are the newer forms, which I haven't totally learned, but you can also go into legacy forms and you can pick them right here. Just start typing in the name and you can find them, or you can actually look at the full name down the list. If you're not sure what exactly it's called, you can look right here. Crickets.
Crickets. It's okay. Maybe my phone tech is spreading.
It says they're all there, but nobody's talking.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to tell you, Dalesse, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for helping me navigate through my tech difficulties. Hopefully I'll be able to end the call. I don't know, but thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. And you agents, if you ever need anything, you know who to call.
Take care, everyone.
Have a great night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.